Hello everyone, welcome to week 4 of our subject, Special Crime Investigation with Simulation on Interview and Interrogation. Our topic for today is the concepts of transnational crime. So we are going to discuss the concept of transnational crimes, the manner of committing it, and the roads of transnational crime. So, why transnational crime? It is because transnational crimes nowadays are one of the big challenges, no, that our law enforcement personnel are facing, and this is worldwide. Transnational crimes are crimes that have an actual or potential effect across national borders and crimes that are intrastate but offend fundamental values of the international community. The term is commonly used in law enforcement and academic uh, communities. So, we know the nature of transnational crime. Uh, it is happening across national borders. No, it can be that the crime is started to be committed in one country and then continuously and goes out to other country. Okay, and this is the instance wherein it offends the fundamental values of the international community. Types of transnational crimes. Lindsay Fisher provides that transnational crimes are crimes that occur across national borders. These crimes are of heightened concern because the countries affected don't have the jurisdiction to prosecute criminals who are committing transnational crimes from other countries. While many countries combine forces to combat these crimes, still drug trafficking, money laundering, arms trafficking or firearms trafficking, and human trafficking are growing international problems. Let us know the nature of these transnational crimes. Let us have first drug trafficking. So, drug trafficking refers to illegal drugs being sold and distributed. This happens in the United States as well as in other countries, even here in the Philippines. We know that that is the number one problem of our community. That it even challenged, no, the administration of President Duterte, no, to uh, at least minimize, if not stop, no, totally the uh, crimes about drugs. The main concern with transnational drug trafficking for the United States is illegal drugs being transported in from other countries and sold. Not only do these illegal drugs cause crime in the States, but the sale of them also draws large amounts of money into other countries because illegal drugs such as marijuana, methamphetamines, and cocaine are in demand in the United States. Trafficking in drugs is a very common and lucrative transnational crime. This causes drug trafficking to be extremely hard to combat and stop. With drug trafficking comes another types of crimes such as money laundering, illegal possession of firearms, or even murder. Then we have money laundering. It refers to the process of criminals disguising the illegal origins of their money. Money laundering occurs all over the world. Criminals who get their money from illegal actions, such as prostitution, smuggling, or computer fraud, typically launder their money in order not to attract the attention of authorities. By not attracting attention from authorities, these criminals are able to fly under the radar and continue their criminal activities, making even more money without getting in trouble. So how is money laundering done? It is done in three main ways. Una, disguising the source of the money, such as disguising a prostitution ring as a massage parlor. So nangyayari ito, no? Dito sa Pilipinas may mga ganon. Yung establishment, they make it appear as a massage parlor. But actually, uh, prostitution is being practiced inside. Okay? So that is disguising the source of money. Another is changing the form, such as changing cash into a money order or moving the funds, such as taking money from one large bank account and putting it in several smaller accounts under different names. So gagamit sila ng iba't ibang pangalan, no? So idinidistribute nila yung deposit sa iba't ibang bangko gamit ng iba't ibang pangalan para hindi matrace yung origin ng money. Then we have arms or firearms trafficking. So it refers to the smuggling of guns, ammunition, and other weapons. So hindi lamang po guns, kundi pati bala and other weapons. When weapons are smuggled into a country and sold illegally, buyers don't have to have any type of license or waiting period in order to buy one. This makes it easier for criminal who can purchase a weapon legally to obtain one. So gusto nila ito kasi wala na silang mga ipaprocess pang mga papeles, no? Hindi na sila maghihintay ng matagal. So, gusto nilang bilhin ang mga smuggled guns, ammunition, and other weapons na ito. Okay? Smuggled weapons typically end up in the hands of criminals or people with criminal intentions. This causes more crimes to occur that could potentially be reduced if illegal arms trafficking is reduced or eliminated. Stopping arms trafficking is difficult because weapons have military, ginagamit yan kasi ng military, law enforcers, law enforcement, and ginagamit din ito sa sports. So this makes it harder to determine if a weapon is in the country and possessed legally or not. Then, human trafficking. Ito naman yung pagbebenta ng mga human beings or tao. So it is a crime against humanity. It involves the sale, transportation, receipt, and harboring of human beings through the use of force, threats, or coercion with the intent to exploit the individuals. Human trafficking often includes payment or money transfer from a trafficker to a person in control of the victim. What are the common reasons that humans are trafficked? Kaya nga gilako da, tattao. This includes prostitution, sexual exploitation, or forced slavery. So, ingat, dapat mag-ingat tayo sa mga ito lalo na sa mga nagbabalak na magtrabaho sa ibang bansa. May mga agencies na posting na sila ay legal na agency at sila ay nagre-recruit ng mga applicants. So, alam naman natin at palagi naman nating naririnig yung mga warnings na pag tayong mag-apply sa mga hindi legal na ahensya. Hindi porket sinabi niya o wala itong ano to? Walang processing fee, yung mga ganon. Ha? Kasi hindi natin alam kung ito ay isa sa mga naghahakot ng mga tao para ibenta. Okay? O, ayan. Ulitin ko, bakit sila nagbebenta ng mga tao para gawing prostitute or gamitin sa sexual activity or magiging slave, no? Human trafficking happens across state lines as well as across international borders. Okay, combating transnational crime. Paano ba ito lalabanan? No? Transnational organized crime undermines sustainable development in the achievement of target across the agenda, including those fundamental to peace, security, the rule of law, growth, equity, and domestic resource mobilization. It is multifaceted in nature, comprising a variety of criminal sectors, crimes and criminal behaviors, and typologies. It can have not only a pernicious impact on rule of law and governance, but also a deleterious impact on domestic resource mobilization, including money laundering, corruption, and other economic crimes which impact on fiscal policies. We have here international normative framework on organized crime. So the normative framework for combating transnational organized crime is ROAD. At the heart of this framework, we have the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, which was adopted in November 2000. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption is equally important. In addition, we have the Financial Action Task Force International Standards on Combating Money Laundering and the Financing of Terrorism and Proliferation provides recommendations for effective implementation of legal, regulatory, and operational measures to prevent money laundering and combat the financing of terrorism. Data and information on money laundering are covered in more details in a dedicated cluster in the Domestic Public Resources Action Area. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime entered into force on September 29, 2003, and is furthered by 3 protocols. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, or UNTOC, has 147 signatories and 187 states parties. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption entered into force on December 14, 2005, and has 140 signatories and 181 states parties. Next, we have the selected trends in transnational organized crime. Building a capacity to collect, analysis, and disseminate data and information on transnational organized crime is extremely difficult, as highlighted in a note prepared for the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. The data which does exist cannot be aggregated and is not comparable across criminal markets or across countries and regions. Over the course of many years, according to the provisions of the conventions and in response to resolutions, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has advanced the collection of data related to transnational organized crime via questionnaires and surveys and the development of data sets. The approval of the Sustainable Development Goals in the related framework of indicators will require additional efforts to improve statistical data on crime and criminal justice at the country level. The ambitious set of targets and goals embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals needs to be accompanied by ambitious plans and activities to enable countries to produce the much needed high quality data for indicators selected to monitor targets under Goal 16 and other relevant targets. So we have here trafficking in persons under the International Office for Migration Data. The International Office for Migration and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime have different systems for tracking data on trafficking in persons. The International Office for Migration collects data on victims of trafficking in persons through its Global Human Trafficking Database. The database is a standardized anti-trafficking data management tool available to all International Office for Migration missions and is actively used throughout all regions of the world. The structure follows the format of the accompanying International Office for Migration victims of trafficking questionnaires used by the IOM missions and partnering organizations involved in direct assistance and containing information both of a quantitative and qualitative nature on victims, traffickers, routes, and patterns of exploitation. The IOM's global database has approximately 46,000 cases of victims of human trafficking, which were identified from 2002 until the first half of 2016. 66% of whom are women. Victims of human trafficking assisted by IOM from 2002 to 2016 are of 140 different nationalities, and they were exploited, identified, and referred in 150 different countries of destination. About two-thirds of the identified and assisted victims of human trafficking are female. The numbers of identified victims of human trafficking who are men has increased significantly over time, which challenges the notion that it is mostly women who are vulnerable to human trafficking. The percentage of children assisted by IOM from the total number of victims assisted varied over the years, from 4% in 2001 to almost one-third of all victims assisted in 2010. We will have trafficking in persons through the UNODC data or United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime data. As the guardian to the UN Protocol on Trafficking in Persons, UNODC's data collection is framed within the structure of this international instrument and uses its definitions. More than 90% of countries have trafficking in persons legislation that in whole or in part is based on these definitions, making the data collected more consistent and comparable than for many other crimes. Statistical information on trafficking in persons is collected by the UNODC through a short dedicated questionnaire distributed to governments and by the collection of official information available in the public domain. Monitoring trafficking in persons is particularly challenging because of its hidden nature and the complexity of identifying affected victims. For 2012 to 2014, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime database includes information on more than 63,000 detected victims and more than 81 suspected, prosecuted, or convicted trafficking offenders. From this data, it emerges that the levels of detected victims calculated per 100,000 population of the country where victims are detected have been relatively stable over the last few years, although significant differences between regions emerge. The higher levels in Europe can be partially explained by the better identification and recording capacities in that region. Analysis of the data shows that child trafficking has been increasingly detected, with the share of children among total detected victims increasing from 13% recorded in 2004 to 33% in 2011. Then we have on illicit trafficking of firearms. The size, patterns, and routes of illicit trafficking of firearms remain largely unknown, as it is a highly hidden and complex trade whose points of departure from illicit manufacturing in trade remain difficult to detect. To address this lack of knowledge, the first United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime study on firearms was published in 2015, and that exercise, although not global in coverage, has highlighted the value of international collection of this data. The limited responses indicate that a large proportion of firearm seizures by law enforcement agencies are conducted in relation to other offenses such as drug trafficking. The study also highlighted the existence of major challenges related to the collection and analysis of data on seized firearms. The Arms Trade Treaty in the UNTOC Protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components, and ammunition provide the international legal instrument to regulate international trade in firearms. The pillars of that regime are the creation of national registries of firearms, proper marking of all firearms produced and imported, systematic recording and tracing of all seized firearms to identify the point of diversion from legal to illegal ownership and use, and international collaboration in firearms tracing. So I will repeat the pillars of that regime, that international legal instrument in regulating international trade in firearms uh, are the creation of national registries of firearms, proper marking of all firearms produced and imported. Then we have systematic recording and tracing of all seized firearms, This is to identify the point of diversion from legal to illegal ownership and use, and yung collaboration ng lahat, no? International collaboration of all countries in firearms tracing. Then we have organized crime or gang-related homicide. Transnational organized crime is related to violence, insecurity, internally displaced persons, and migration. Data on homicide is found in the Global Homicide Book. The increase in homicide levels in Central America, for example, in recent years is largely a result of violence related to the control of drug trafficking routes, turf wars between criminal groups, and to conflict between organized criminal groups and the state. Then we have trafficking in wildlife. Wildlife, ito po yung mga wild animals, no? The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, with the support of other international organizations, is developing a global database of seizure incidents known as WorldWise, which currently contains information on some 164,000 seizures from 120 countries. Between 2004 and 2015, nearly 7,000 species were seized. That includes not only mammals but also reptiles, corals, birds, and fish. Detected trafficking refers to several types of flora and fauna, and no single species is responsible for more than 6% of the seashore incident. While significant attention is often devoted to combating illegal trafficking in mammals, some 70% of the recorded seizures involve non-mammal species. No single country is identified as the source of more than 15% of the total number of seized shipments recorded in the database. In connection with seashore incidents, traffickers of some 80 nationalities have been identified, illustrating the fact that illicit trafficking in wildlife is truly a global issue. All regions of the world play a role as a source or transit area or destination for contraband wildlife, although certain species are strongly associated with particular regions. Efforts to improve data. So, the United Nations Survey of Crime Trends and Operations of Criminal Justice Systems, with an expanding network of national focal points covering 130 countries, can provide a good overview of global crime trends, though more work is needed to improve the quality and availability of data collected and disseminated. Additional efforts are needed to improve statistical data on crime and criminal justice at the country level. The work undertaken to implement the 2013 Roadmap to improve crime statistics has laid the foundations for better data on crime and criminal justice. In 2015, the International Classification of Crime for statistical purposes was adopted by the United Nations Statistical Commission, and its implementation plan was endorsed by the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. As the custodian of the international classification, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Stewards work to produce methodological guidance on its implementation. A technical advisory group has been established in the first volume of the implementation manual for the international classification is expected to be finalized already in 2017. This is according to Interagency Task Force on Financing for Development, Monitoring Development Finance 2017. Okay, so this end our slide. For your activity, uh, you have there an essay. So I will make the essay uh, type simpler and easier for you to answer. So you don't need to follow the instructions given here. But as long as you are going to answer fully, no, the question given. Okay, and for your multiple choices, again, I advise you to apply the elimination process for you to come up with the correct answer. So thank you for joining me this time, and hope that next meeting or next lesson you will be again with me. Good day.